And I want to get very practical with you on this final segment of Enterprise Architecture Live. So I want to go through a case study of sorts, but I want to share with you best practices for building a culture of excellence and innovation, and specifically in the context of enterprise architecture and what I call intelligent business process management. So these are not my personal experiences only. These are the experience of over 30,000 excellence and innovation leaders across more than 100 organizations and 20 plus countries. And so as I engage on this discussion, I'm going to keep an eye on the questions that you have. And then to the time that we have allowed for Q&A in the end, feel free to ask very practical questions about how do you apply these concepts in your organization. So I'm going to change hats here. Give me just a minute here because I'm going to change hats because the background is going to change. And we are going to talk about how to move enterprise architecture from our homes to culture, to the way that businesses are run. As you know, the ultimate competitive advantage for any business is its culture. And I'll start with the end in mind. And building a culture of excellence and innovation where enterprise architecture is an integral component of that is the ultimate game changer. It's the ultimate competitive advantage that you can have. So I'll share my presentation here with you, and hopefully you all can see that now. And let me just confirm here that the right monitor is being shared. And as we go through this, please enter your questions. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on them. The first thing that I'm gonna do with you is to pose a question to you. And my question is, on the context of enterprise architecture, on the context of building a culture as your ultimate competitive advantage, where enterprise architecture plays a critical role in that culture, what do you think matters most? Is it about ideas? Is it about methods? Is it about the technologies that we can be talking about? RPA, machine learning, AI, 3D printing, all these exponential technologies that are accelerating right now? Or is it about people? And this is a bit of a tricky question. So I want you to please go into the question box right now and tell you what matters most. Tell me what matters most. Go ahead and click. Pick one? You can only pick one out of the four. What matters? They are all important in different ways, but there is one that is disproportionately important. So is it about ideas? Is it about methods? Is it about technologies? Or is it people? So I'm gonna give you a few seconds here to enter that on the question box, and I'm gonna keep monitoring as we go through the presentation. Very good, excellent. I already see the questions coming in. Very good. Pat, I see your input. Jeb, I see your input. Well done. Well done, ladies and gentlemen. Keep that coming, and I'm gonna keep an eye on your input. Excellent. So the world of greatness is what I want to talk about. And the world of greatness is not easy to digest, because the world of greatness is filled with contradictions, is filled with these forces that are pulling in very different directions. And it's the force of purpose on one side and discipline on the other side. It is about exponential technologies pulling in one direction and human values of trust, of collaboration, of vulnerability pulling in different directions. It is about incremental improvements and breakthrough innovations. And that is very confusing because people like to be one side or the other, and they get very confused when you have these forces pulling in very different directions. And there is no greater contradiction in the world of greatness than the contradiction between excellence and innovation. Because excellence is pulling in one direction. Excellence is all about setting performance standards and meeting and exceeding those performance standards consistently. The world of excellence is all about efficiency and about, you know, having a plan and meeting and exceeding those plan expectations. The world of innovation is pulling in a different direction. The world of innovation is about, yeah, I understand how things are, but how do we get to a breakthrough innovation? How do we take a leap from where we are? Because we cannot design cars by squeezing efficiencies out of horses. So there is this natural friction and tension between the world of excellence and the world of innovation. And I'll posit to you that the great enduring organizations of our time, they have found the right blend between these very contradictory forces. So I will talk to you as we go through the presentation. I will share with you these very critical concepts that emerge not from theory, not from reading books and great authors, which I have done, but what I'm going to share with you is based on the practical applications of those concepts. I am not a visionary leader who has the ability to predict the future. None of us has that ability. As a matter of fact, there are only two types of people who predict the future: those who don't know and those who don't know that they don't know. So you have to choose which one are you. The real visionary leaders that I have worked with, what they are, they're very empirical leaders. They are leaders who are constantly experimenting with different approaches. And then when they see something that works, they try to understand why it works. And once they understand why it works, they scale that. Now, for the outside world, they seem like geniuses who can predict the future. Internally, they are working really hard on a system that allows for quick experimentation and really getting deeper onto the items that work and understanding why they work. So I'll do a brief description of my journey. I'm originally from Brazil. I was educated in the United States with a background in engineering, physics, and investment banking and entrepreneurship. I got my first job working in Japan for Sony. And that was a time when Sony was the leading technological company in the world. And I got to experience what innovation at a very fast pace looks like, specifically technological innovation. And I'll share with you that the lessons from Sony as a technological leader of its time is that innovation doesn't care about our gender, race, ethnicity, or how many certificates we have hanging on the I love myself wall. When it comes to real innovation, there are 4 traits that separate great innovators from the rest. And those traits have to do with a strong sense of purpose, tremendous passion for what you do, high levels of discipline, which is consistency with purpose, and an incredible ability to have resilience when faced with challenges. Now, I will fast forward through that through time because of our time. My next experience was with a startup in California that changed the world. Cymer, which today is Cymer ASML, designed the laser systems that were breakthrough for semiconductor manufacturing in a time where we all thought that Moore's law was going to stop because we had made circuits as small as possible. Well, there comes a breakthrough technology on excimer lasers developed by Cymer. And we were a startup that in 5 years went from really nobody knows who you are to over 90% market share. And revolutionized semiconductor microlithography. To this day, processors are imaged with this technology and allows us to continue with Moore's law for the foreseeable future. I then became the innovation leader for Nestle in North America. And the lesson from Nestle was that 585 business units, 350,000 people around the world, where do you start? And the lesson is that when you want to accelerate innovation, when you want to implement best practices, enterprise architecture approaches, you have to be empathetic to culture in a system like that. Because as we all know, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and whatever initiative you have there on enterprise architecture just becomes a side dish to culture. So develop a great empathy for culture. You have to meet people where they're at. You have to meet organizations where they're at, and you have to appreciate the diversity of perspectives and subcultures that exist in large organizations. And then the last two, which I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, 15 years that I spent at the end of my career as a corporate leader with energy organizations and infrastructure organizations. A very difficult environment because technology and innovation and enterprise architecture are not really that critical for a lot of the biggest earners in that industry. So how do you sell a proposition to an organization like that, where what you have is not the most important thing that they're working on, or not even near what creates the most value for them? And then you have a culture that's not really aligned with this, with change and innovation and enterprise architecture specifically. So, but these organizations are the ones that created the most value from these activities. So we're going to talk about how they got there. Now, I'll go through these concepts quickly because of the time that we have allowed. I mean, we literally spent 5 days on a masterclass on just this topic, and I'm going to summarize for you in the next 25 minutes or so. So let's start with some definitions here about what is intelligent business process management. And you can term that, depending on your terminology, you can think of that as part of enterprise architecture. In some organizations, they think of enterprise architecturally completely in the context of intelligent business process management. But the definitions is here for you to read. It's the intelligent blending of stewardship with the wisdom of the organization and proven methods to identify, prioritize, and implement significant value creation, business process designs, improvements, and innovations. There is a lot in that definition. Nowhere in there it says anything related to technology or AI or machine learning or RPA. Interesting. Stewardship and the wisdom of the organization. Interesting. We'll keep going. All right. So the iBPM maturity model, you are familiar with this. Several of you have an IT background. It's a very close approximation to the maturity model that you would see on related to IT. You have levels of process maturity that goes from the lowest level, which is recognized, to the highest level, which is optimized. And I think the key takeaway here is that most processes are not worth having. So that's a discussion to be had. And the ones that are worth having, you need to have them at the defined level. And then it doesn't become a quest for becoming managed and optimized. You have, as a value creation leader in the organization, with your EA hat on, you have to identify which ones of these business processes are worth taking to those levels of management and optimization. You have to look at your cost benefit and your return on investment on those areas. So, not trivial that not all processes need to be optimized. Now, and there are levels of intelligent business process management innovation as well. And I'll share that at a high level. Again, this is just fundamental. You have 70%, and this is based on practice, based on over 3,000 organizations and looking behind the scenes on their innovation programs. 70% of what they do and the innovations that they do is at the core of the business. 20% are adjacents or extensions of that core, and only about 10% are what we call disruptive innovations. And when you call about disruptive innovations, we're not talking about technology. We're talking about business models that are being disrupted. Now, technology can be an enabler for that business model disruption, but it's not necessarily the only enabler or even the most common enabler. So this is important because in a lot of your organizations, people, and especially the folks in the business who get their coverage on innovation from the media spends 100% of their time on 10% of the portfolio, which is a disruptive time and usually focus on technology. And that's a perception that needs to be changed in your organization if you're going to have holistic improvements and innovations. Let's keep going here. So what are the pillars of success for iBPM from a value creation standpoint? Not from a marketing standpoint, not from that, oh, we're so good because we use these cool technologies, but we lose a bunch of money. I'm talking from a value creation standpoint, over 10 years plus, what do these organizations look like inside, and what are the pillars of success for them? And there are 3 pillars that we have identified. The number one is governance. And governance has defined roles and the structure for iBPM value creation within that organization. We'll talk about that. They have methods, but this is really interesting. They have very disciplined approaches and methods, proven methodologies. most important, they have clear execution mechanisms to translate the principles of enterprise architecture into action and value. And they develop this common language that's often associated with the method, but doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's driven by the culture itself. But I have to mention to you that the methods are important, but the method that you choose is less important. It is important to have a method. It's not as critical to have this or that method. So this is an important lesson. And the third item and the third pillar for iBPM value creation is a collaborative leadership that's widespread in the organization. And this requires a skill development for all professionals on collaborative innovation for value creation. And this is an area that a lot of businesses struggle, because it's not that you don't need a hierarchy. It's not that the hierarchical model is broken. You need a hierarchy, but within the hierarchy, the great enduring organizations, they have collaborative leadership that works with the hierarchy very effectively. And this skill development is a trademark of the great enduring organizations that create the most value from enterprise architecture, from the concepts of intelligent business process management. Very well. So let's go through each one of these pillars in summary fashion. From a governance standpoint, what are the roles that you see in these organizations? They do not have a, this governance, by the way, and these roles that I'm going to describe here, these are not new people that you have hired. These are roles that people in existing functions assume. Okay, so again, this is an overview. At the highest level, they have a very clear ownership structure. They have clear ownership structure for the business. We have clear ownership structure for the key business processes. As you know, from an EA perspective, if you do not have data ownership, it is very difficult to have effective applications of that data, because the data source may become unreliable. The ownership of that is not clear, and often you have poor quality data that permeates that. Now, think more broadly from a business standpoint. That same level of ownership is true for the organizations that do it best. They have very clearly defined ownership levels for the business and for key business processes. Then they have a layer of collaborative leaders and entrepreneurs in the organization. These are not necessarily the high-level hierarchical leaders. These are individuals across the organization who have highly developed collaborative leadership skills that work across the organization and within silos to deliver the most value in the shortest time and simplest means, typically for certain discipline approaches that I'm going to talk about later. You typically have a coach who is basically not some master of methodology, but a coach who is a master on entrepreneurship and collaborative leadership. A serial entrepreneur who has delivered millions and millions of value creation to the organization consistently through his or her initiatives and projects. That role is very important, sharing that expertise with the teams. You typically have a champion that is a hierarchical leader, different from that process owner, who has authority over certain areas in the organization, also provides political guidance to the teams and strategic guidance to the teams on the directions that we're taking, and making sure that we are aligned with the strategic and cultural directions of the organization. And ultimately, you have a select group of senior leaders who form a steering committee who oversee the functioning of this program. Now, this is a summarized structure that provides these building blocks to achieve disciplined iBPM value creation. Now, let's talk a little bit about the methods. This structure is very important. What methods do they see? What methods do we see that we verified that they're using? There is like tens of different types of methods that are used, but there are 4 methods that show up most commonly behind the organizations that are very good at delivering systematic value creation. And what we see there is a combination of innovation methods, where there is a discipline of thinking different and innovate, and there is different, we can spend a lot of time in each one of these methods. I will not because of our time, but there is a very disciplined approach to innovation. There is a very clear hierarchy for business process management with clear end-to-end process ownership which is a battle all by itself, to have senior leaders in the organization understand how we create value for our customers and how we align our business processes end to end with clear ownership to deliver that value to the customers. It sounds easy. It's incredibly complex. It takes decades of work in some cases to fine-tune a structure like that. Then we have the more what I would call efficiency methods that you apply to the system. You have lean, which is all about creating a reliable, balanced workflow through a pull system, increase speed, eliminate waste. Wonderful stuff. You can put agile in that if you're like from a software background, you work on agile, Scrum. All of those things are derived from lean concepts. You have Six Sigma, which is about reducing variation to satisfy customers, because the customers do not feel the average of your process, they feel the variation of your process. Now, these methods are interesting, and these are the 4 most common methods that we see in the most effective organizations. But keep in mind, the methods alone do not transform businesses. People do. Listen, I am a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt for over like 2 decades. But when I tell that to people, most of them think that I have a dangerous mental condition. When I'm talking to executives, they could care less about that. They're interested on how I'm going to create the most value, the shortest time, and simplest means. So these methods only make sense if they're helping you create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. So keep that in mind as we go through the last stage of value creation maturity levels, the last pillar, which has to do with value creation maturity levels through iBPM. And on this one here, this is about the development of collaborative leadership in the organization. And what you see is that for organizations to create a lot of value through enterprise architecture, technologies, intelligent business process management, often it starts with individual brilliance. You just have someone in your organization, it could be you in this conference today, who is just brilliant. You know stuff. You love what you do. You have tremendous amount of passion about your EA. You are disciplined about it. You're good at bringing people together and making sure that your ideas get implemented. You have the resilience that is necessary to overcome challenges. Wow, you're the full package. You can create multi-million-dollar organizations with a single individual like that. Congratulations. I work with great entrepreneurs who have done just that and continue to do that today, and entrepreneurs who do that within organizations. The only problem with that is that you're going to be a successful multi-million-dollar corporation. Very difficult for you to be a successful multi-billion-dollar corporation. Why? Because your individual brilliance is not easy to scale. So what we see in the multi-billion-dollar successful organizations is the next level. And the next level is about scaling that individual brilliance. And you do that through iBPM systems and mechanisms that translate the principles that this individual has naturally into action that creates value for the entire system. And what you see then at that level, these multi-billion-dollar organizations which are prospering, they're growing, is that they have the governance in place. That governance that I just talked about, it's in place, it's clear. The structure is there, the roles are clearly defined. It's very clear how they accelerate innovation, collaborative leadership development, and value creation through clear roles and responsibilities in the structure. And several of them also have now evolved to create what we call growth and technology accelerators, where they have this small bets that they're placing in a lot of different technologies and testing them and seeing what works, what doesn't work, and what works, they're looking for how to scale what works. And this very deliberate growth and technology accelerators are a very common part of these organizations. Listen, today around the world, when we talk about the best organizations that draw a lot of media attention, they are at this level, okay? And these are some of the best. Most organizations will never get to this level because of several issues related to culture, related to the individuals that they have in the organization, and the market conditions, blah, blah, blah. The ones that make it to that level have this have these characteristics and are built on these items. Now, there is still one additional level. And this additional level is a bit of a panacea for value creation, innovation, enterprise architecture. And it's incredibly hard to get to this next level because now it requires you to build a culture where enterprise architecture, new technologies, innovation are all aimed at creating value for the professionals, for the customers, and for the enterprise. It sounds really easy. It's incredibly hard to do. That's why most organizations have not reached it, and they will never reach it because it's characterized by broad collaborative leadership and innovation acceleration skills development. This is not a small group of people that you pick the select few to be the drivers for this initiative in the organization. It's actually a self-selected group of people in the organization who have developed this collaborative leadership and innovation acceleration skills, typically through a discipline approach, and it's very broad in the organization. And at this point, this level, you're talking about the trillion-dollar organization. This trillion-dollar organization is built on a clear purpose for the organization, and individuals who have a personal purpose which are aligned with the purpose of the organization. It's built on culture, building a culture of excellence and innovation that permeates all that you do, and a strong set of core values that you live by every day. Very good. So collaboration, innovation, and value creation are the ultimate measurements of iBPM effectiveness and also of enterprise architecture effectiveness. And I want to pose this to you. If you judge your enterprise architecture program by a set of metrics and value creation is not one of your very top metrics, you need to reassess that because you're disconnected. So let's go further. So what is a typical journey? I'm gonna share you now the context. I want to get practical here very quickly on a specific context. This is an energy organization that went to this road to the iBPM value creation. But they didn't start with that. They started by the early 2000s hiring an incredibly expensive consultant to come in and do process mapping on everything that they did and the high performance teams that would go make these improvements. Well, they got the process mapping done, but there was no benefit. And the implementation was very sketchy over a 2-year period because people saw the complexity of what they're dealing with. They became overwhelmed by it and they went back to do their day jobs. Well, they went on to develop a Lean Six Sigma program because now we're going to be more targeted on the EA initiatives that we have and on the other initiatives we have in our organization. That was good. That was a 70% implementation rate, $90 million in annual benefits on EBITDA, which is terrific. But they still had very large bets and large scope issues that were not getting done very well. And it was not until they implemented effective process ownership in the years ahead that they quadrupled their benefits and they went from 70% implementation to 99% plus implementation over more than a decade. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is, you may look at it and say, well, that's common sense. Common sense is the least common of the sense is in large organizations. It's incredibly hard to do these things, to institute clear end-to-end process ownership in your organization. Organizations are complex and layered. People come and go, and it's very difficult to do this effectively. Now, let me share you a bit of a high-level view on how it's done effective on an energy organization, just to pick one as an example. This is intelligent business process management for an energy infrastructure company. Now, this is at the highest level. This is incredibly important because it's not you and I talking about EA. It's about us sitting with the C-level in a multi-day exercise on understanding and defining the key business processes for our organization, agreeing on them, and then committing that those are the way that our business functions, and this is the way that we're going to carry our business forward. This sounds simple. It's incredibly hard to do because you have to align political agendas, personal interests, and everything else that happens, the complexities of a reorganization at the C-level. And what you see there in green is what this organization agree is most important for them. This is incredibly important because most C-levels never did this exercise. Most C-levels could never agree on what is most important for the organization. No wonder that you deal with all these conflicting priorities at the lower levels of the organization. So starting at this point is incredibly important and difficult to do, but not sufficient. That organization, for example, is an organization that prides itself on doing multi-billion-dollar projects. Project teams are king. So this talk about defining the organization as a set of critical processes is foreign to them, doesn't make sense, because I do multi-billion-dollar projects. Processes are kind of in the background, I don't care about them. Well, you have to reshape that and tell them that that's true that we do multi-billion-dollar projects, but we need to create an infrastructure for our processes, for our EA as well, to support all of these projects effectively. And that organization alone ran 11,000 different unique projects per year. And these are large projects. I'm talking about building a power plant in Thailand or a water facility in Egypt. These are very large, complex infrastructure projects. So the role of intelligent business process management, and I would say for you, enterprise architecture, is to understand what execution excellence looks like, and then build the process excellence that allows you to do that. And iBPM, and you can look at that as EA in your context, is an interface for that. Now, let's get onto the next level. These are interesting concepts, but they're complex. So how do we simplify? And we have to take this to our organizations because of the overly complex ways that our organizations are layered, the complexity of our businesses, the complexity of our customers. And I want you to keep this concept of innovation through simplification in mind, because this mindset is going to help us tremendously as we look at ways of making EA, iBPM more effective in organizations. So keep this concept in mind. You're all surrounded by complexity, and people come at you and say, whoa, you need to do this other thing here for me. I need a new system. I need a new tool. And but you have to remember, wherever you are in the organization, that when you're asked to do more, you have to step away from it, and you have to remember that perfection is not attained by adding things to systems. Perfection, real perfection, is only attained when there is nothing left to take out. So I want you to take this perspective as we look forward here, because great EA teams, great iBPM teams, as they help leadership in this very complex journey, they are very good at understanding what is the essence of the problem and not wrapping a complex solution around the complex problem. They attack the essence of the problem. And the way that they do that is incredibly simple. They do designs that are incredibly simple, and yet most people fail miserably at executing this, and the enterprise architects are very guilty of this. Because instead of automating things, which is what you normally hear, you should be thinking about how I'm going to eliminate first, how I'm going to reduce next, and then after I have the most simplified version of what I want, I automate that. But I'll posit that most of you and most of organizations do not follow these common sense steps, because you get busy with the complexity of the world and the work that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. So you have great enduring organizations are very good at zooming out from the whirlwind of their day jobs and able to apply these very powerful principles, which are very simple, but very powerful, and they apply these principles with discipline. So I want to get into the weeds with you. Let's talk about a specific context. On this organization, we ran over 2,000 innovation projects per year. You heard that right, 2,000 innovation projects. Most of them had an EA clear component associated with them. That's overwhelming. How do you manage a system like that? So let's get into the details of a specific project. This is a $1 billion power plant that includes the design, procurement, and construction of more than 120 different types of unique and complex valve control stations. The engineers in the company that work on these designs, they said, we need to automate the valve control station design process. Oh, really, Tom? Let's automate that. They spent 2 years trying to automate this, and they couldn't get it done. Why? They had the best designers, the best software engineers working on this. Why they couldn't get it done? They couldn't get it done because they're automating the complexity of that process. 120 different designs for every single power plant. You have multiple power plants. The multiplication of the different designs becomes overwhelming. So they kept trying to automate that complexity. They should not do that. They should eliminate first, they should reduce next, and automate last. But they didn't do that for 2 years, and these are very smart people, very incredibly capable EA architects and software developers. All right, so we took the right approach. Let's understand the complexity. 120 different designs, valve control stations at even the highest level is a complicated thing to do. It takes a long time to do each one. So ask the question, what is the essence of this process? Are there things here that we could eliminate if we're not doing special cases? And when we did that, we look at the non-value added activities of this process, we identify all of these areas as opportunities. Could I get rid of them? Heck no. If I got rid of them, I wouldn't be able to do the work. It's not that simple. So what do I need? What do I need is collaborative leadership. What I needed is to get someone to get this team together. There's 120 different designs and say, is there a better way? Can we simplify the way we do things? And then for a number of days, people are arguing back and forth and saying there is no way because what I do is very unique. And this is how they need it in Thailand. And this is how they need it in Ireland. And this is how they need it in Brazil. And they're all special codes. And they throw you all this complexity at you. Great collaborative leader is able to work through that and with the team. And then eventually they come up, well, maybe we can create a standardized approach. And there are fights about standardized approaches because everybody wants a standardized approach as long as it is their own standardized approach. And now we have 120 different standardized approaches around the table. How do we do that? Collaborative leadership, ladies and gentlemen. And this is not easy. This is not something, this is not a skill set that most people have been trained on the discipline of collaborative leadership. But having that, and that's what was done in this system, we're able to get the group together, not to agree on one way of doing things. We agree on 6 ways of doing things that would account for 80% of the design functions on those valve stations. And when we did that, we came up with a process with 6 designs that was 20 times faster. Now, this process that you see here for valve control station took 4 months for us to agree on. It wasn't about the technology, it was about the alignment in the business. Now, this is a lot easier said than done. These 6 designs now, they were now at this point simple enough, standard enough that I could automate them on a software called Plant Vision. We did that in Plant Vision, and now we have an automated solution. But so it took 2 years initially to do it, the automation, and then we got the automation done in a matter of 3 to 4 months. As a matter of fact, the project was 3 to 4 months. The automation was done after that, was done in about 2 months after that. And to this day, this is the way they do the design in Plant Vision. Literally pick out 1 out of 6 options, put on the design, and then you spend additional time doing the 20% customizations that are needed for every part of the world. So think about doing something like that in your organization at scale. What do you need for that? AI, RPA, machine learning? No. You need to build a battalion of collaborative leaders in your organization who can do that effectively across the organization. And these are not easy skills to develop, and these are not easy people to find because they must have a blend of technical skills and highly developed interpersonal skills. So with that, let's go back to what matters most. I saw a lot of your answers. This is fantastic. Thank you for providing those. A lot of you picked people. A lot of you picked ideas. A lot of you picked methods, technologies. All right. So ideas, methods, technologies, or people. I'll summarize by saying that ideas are everywhere. What are uncommon are people willing to put their reputation behind ideas. People with the purpose, the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to get it done. Methods are important, but methods do not transform businesses. People do. Technologies are great, but technologies are like romantic lovers. They solve one problem in the short run, and they create 10 new problems in the long run, unless it is the right technology. And the right technology is the one that enables your process to go faster, cheaper, and better. But it's a problem view, not a technology view, as most of you know in this audience because you're very experienced. And then it comes to people. Is it about people? Sounds like a good answer, right? People are the most important asset. That's not completely true. It's not about people. It's about finding the right people in your organization. And I want to show you a couple of examples of that, what the right people look like. This is an organization in energy infrastructure where for 6 years we operated with them with a very clear Lean Six Sigma program that was creating value for the company. And it was focused on ideas and methods. For 6 years, they were very successful. This is the value creation for the organization and EBITDA, which for that organization was fantastic. The number of people in green that were being part of it, and they were there for 6 years. 99% of improvement and innovation programs in organizations die between 3 and 5 years. So they got to year 6, so they're part of the 1%. And then they hit a major crisis. They hit the 2008-2009 financial crisis, and the organization needed to decide which way we're going to go with this. Are we going to get rid of this program? We said, no, let's change it. Let's make it more entrepreneurial. The methods are important, but let's focus on finding the right people. How do you find the right people, José? You find the right people through the test of execution. You as a leader, you have to create a mechanism, clear execution mechanisms to translate the principles of innovation into value creation. And in those execution mechanisms, you have to have a clear meritocracy of ideas and allow everybody to participate, but only the ones who are able to deliver results get to emerge from it. Wow, that's like Shark Tank within the organization. Actually, it's much more disciplined than that. But let me show you the results because of our time here. This is what the results look like. Everybody thought it would be a disaster because we have all this disciplined approach to improvement and innovation, and now applying this new approach that's focused on just finding the right people with the right collaborative leadership skill sets would not work. It did work. Not only work, we had exponential growth in value creation and engagement across the organization. This organization engaged after 10 years. This is unheard of. 99% of programs die within 5 years. I've never heard of a program that after 10 years is growing exponentially. And the way they did it is because these people delivered that value. And they went on to become win the Global Award of Excellence in Infrastructure based on their collaborative leadership and results that they created. They were ranked the #1 US private company for leaders and leadership development by Chief Executive Magazine. And they won the Global Business Transformation and Operational Excellence Award, which is the BTOES, the organization behind this conference, is here. So I want to summarize this for you. This is a lot of information at you about the practices of the great enduring organizations in our world today. So this is what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen. The great people, these great collaborative leaders in your organization, they are there. They're hidden. Most of them are suffocated by the systems and that you have in your organization and the inability for them to actually deliver value for the organization. Unclear meritocracy of ideas, unclear execution mechanisms to translate the ideas into value creation. Talk about KPIs and metrics related to IT performance when you should be talking about value creation for the business. If you cannot talk about EBITDA, you're not in the business. Just think about that. If it's for profit, even non-profit organizations need to think about that. Now, your job is to create a system, a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms where these individuals can emerge, where you can, because you can only find these individuals through the test of execution. I don't care about their GPA, how many certificates they have on their I love myself wall. It doesn't matter. You're going to find them for the test of execution only. They have purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. Now, what you do with those individuals is that you allow them and their teams to take different perspectives at problems. You give them the freedom to think differently about the way that we're going to do work. Most important, these individuals, they must have courage because what they're doing is hard. They are taking the leap. They are taking that jump from the bridge. They are managing risks very carefully, but they're managing risks in the context of in a context that they can understand those risks, they can manage those risks better than others outside of the organization. And most important, Your job as a leader in an organization like that is to create an environment where great people and great ideas can connect. Because you don't get to be a great enduring organization, a $1 trillion organization, by providing people with financial incentives. I give you $1 million, wonderful. Most of you would retire because you do not have passion, purpose, discipline, or resilience around the work that you do. So those are not the people I'm looking for. I'm looking, what the practice shows consistently is that the great enduring organizations, these people are driven by a purpose, and the work that they do is just a means for that purpose. So your job as a leader is to create an environment where these great people and these great ideas can connect. And when you do that, you create a competitive advantage in your culture that is incredibly hard for others to emulate. So steps for you here. Take disciplined action. Out of this crisis are the best opportunities for you to help build a culture of excellence and innovation for your organization. The time is now, is not later. You have to take disciplined action. And you may think, but come on, Jose, you're usually talking to C-level folks. I'm not a C-level person in my organization. Whatever you are, you're a department lead, do that in your department. You're an individual contributor, wonderful. Develop your innovation acceleration skills and your collaborative leadership skills. Whatever level you are, apply these concepts, take disciplined action. And here what it comes to, be consistent with your purpose and live your core values, especially right now in times of crisis. In times of crisis, the best of our values and the worst of our values are exposed. Be very mindful about the shadow and that you're casting when it comes to your core values. Be consistent with them during this time, because people will remember. Build your iBPM and EA governance and a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. Make it accessible to everyone in the organization. You have to make it a democratic system, yet you have a vetting system to identify what creates the most value in the shortest time and the simplest means. And then you're actually very tough on people getting started. Out of 2,000 innovation projects that we did in that one organization, that in 2010 was a $2 billion organization. In 2018, that organization was sold for $36 billion. Over $1 billion in EBITDA, in additional EBITDA on an annual basis in the last few years. How do you get there? You get there by making accessible to all in the organization. You get there by creating a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. This requires tremendous purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience from everybody in the system, a very strong alignment with purpose and strategic objectives. Now, invest in your people. And when you invest in your people, yeah, invest in their technical skills, that's important, but develop their collaborative leadership skills. Collaborative leadership skills are key differentiators that I can think of in the next decade or two. As you know, technology will keep growing exponentially. It will keep changing exponentially. Collaborative leadership skills will be critically important across the multiple levels of technological development until you don't need people anymore at all. And at that point, I would say collaborative leadership skills are not as critical. We need to move to something else. Innovation acceleration skills is related to that. And it's not just about learning technology again. When I talk about innovation here, innovation is the implementation of new ideas that create value. And when you implement new ideas that create value, the acceleration skills that you need for that have more to do with entrepreneurship, have more to do with collaborative leadership that we talked about before, but has more to do as innovation as a discipline process. Innovation is not an escape from disciplined thinking. It is an escape with disciplined thinking. You must learn the discipline of innovation. And that's very important. That's a whole session to discuss that. And last, when you create the meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms, you need to let the test of innovation execution reveal those who have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to collaboratively lead innovation value creation for your organization. On your EA teams, you need to find who in your EA teams, and you need to ask that question for about yourself. Who has the purpose, the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to get value creation done at scale? Ask yourself the question. And finding those people is the critical lever for scaling to that $1 trillion organization. Now, I do not have this visionary ability to predict the future. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll share with you that the companies that get there, they have built a culture of excellence and innovation as their ultimate competitive advantage. That's what I can share with you. That's the lesson, the ultimate lesson that we have learned. It's incredibly hard because you must have purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience with a very clear purpose for a long period of time. And you must have to be willing to withstand the pain that it takes to get to that purpose over a long period of time. Now, and not just be looking for, oh, I want to become an EVP at a Fortune 50 company. Listen, we all are going to be dead in the next 50 years. What is your contribution between now and the time that you check out of planet Earth? So think about that as you discover what your true purpose is, and your work is just a means of getting there. Now, if you want to stay connected, working across conferences in this area, many associated areas, and also working with lots of great organizations, from the most technologically advanced organizations to organizations that are hidden to most of the business world. We share these experiences live on LinkedIn. We engage in real life discussions. That is my purpose. That's what I'm going to be doing between now and the day that I check off of planet Earth. So because I have the privilege of closing the sessions, we have another 8 minutes or so. I'm going to look at your your questions here, and I'm going to answer them as you pop up. So I didn't have a chance to do that before because I was looking at the presentation. So I'm going to pop up here the questions that you have asked, and I will answer them in order. So first of all, thanks everybody who participate. Lots of great questions here. Lots of people voted for people. Most people voted for people. Manish, you wrote culture eats strategy for breakfast. I like that. Anand, people. Jeb thought was ideas. And Jeb, specifically, you asked a question here about a couple questions. One about perfection being transitory and contextual. And also, can you speak about data ownership and governance? Often the same data elements are used by entirely different silos for entirely different purposes. Very good questions. So let me start with the perfection as a transitory and contextual. Absolutely. Perfection is a moving target. And as a matter of fact, if we go back to the very beginning, when I talk about the contradictions of greatness, forces pulling in different directions, what you see in great enduring organizations is that contradiction at play. And very specifically, the contradictions that are at play there is that on the side of excellence, you have perfection, you have performance standards, meeting and exceeding those performance standards. And those performance standards is a gauge of perfection, if you will. And if you meet them, you're doing well. If you exceed them, you're doing better. But when you meet the performance standards, what do we do with the performance standards? We move them, right? The performance standards get changed. Now perfection has become a moving target. So in the world of excellence, it's all about perfection. It's the mindset of perfection. The world of innovation is a bit different. The world of innovation is perfection from a different path, because in the world of innovation, I'm not thinking about how I'm going to squeeze 5 or 10% performance out of the horses. I'm thinking about how to design cars. And to design cars, you just need a whole different perspective at the problem. The essence of innovation is the ability to take a different perspective at problems. So when you're taking those different perspectives at problems and you're innovating, what are you going to find out? You're going to find out that you're terrible. You don't do this well. These ideas that you have about how to do it different, none of them work. You're failing. You're failing often to succeed sooner. So where does perfection fit in there? Perfection actually can be very degrading on that world now, because it can be demotivating because it becomes impossible, so that I give up. It happens quite often, honestly. I'm an engineer. Most of the people I work with are technical people and engineers, and they have kind of this bimodal way of thinking of the world, kind of the all or nothing thought processes that engineers and technical people have. I'm not going to do anything unless it's perfect. So that can really limit your ability to innovate. So it's all about, again, blending the forces, perfection pulling one direction and pulling another direction when it comes to excellence and innovation. And it's not one or the other, it depends on the context. So the context of operational excellence, for example, perfection can be valid in terms of performance standards and meeting and exceeding those performance standards. In the context of innovation, I often say, don't get perfection, get on the way of good enough. Now, here is the challenge for you. How do you reconcile those statements in the same organization? People look at you and say, well, you're full of contradictions, or you don't know what you want. You say one thing here, one thing there. But that's what it takes. What you need to say and do depends largely on the context, if you're in the world of excellence or if you're in the world of innovation. And it's very important that we develop this ability in our organizations to think with this duality. And that's why I have that quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald right in the beginning. The ultimate test of innovation is the ability of intelligence is the ability to keep two very different concepts in your mind at the same time, and you still retain your ability and function, ability to function in that very chaotic state. So very good. So let's look at what else you have here. It's always the last brick that takes the most weight. There are lots of questions. Let me get the right one. How do you build purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience in newly assigned business leaders? Is still going up the learning curve. That is a fantastic question. Very, very good question. So, Rula, let me tell you this. This is experience, okay, based on empirical evidence. And there are researchers and there are people who are writing books about this, and I do interviews for them to help them in their books. But I'm not writing books. I'm too preoccupied with my purpose right now to be writing a book. So eventually I will. But here's what we have learned: that the people who have the traits of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience, most of them, this is based on over 30,000 practitioners. Keep this in mind. Observation of these practitioners. The overwhelming majority of them have this combination of, they have some genetic traits that I can only say genetic traits. They have instincts about it. They have certain hardships in their lives that they have overcome very effectively, and they have built some of the skills. So I assume it's a combination of genetics and also skills and coping mechanisms that they developed through the adversities and life experiences that they have had. So that's one big component. The other very large component is that they developed it, that they continue to develop. They became self-aware of their purpose, of their passions, of their discipline, and their resilience. They identified those through some life experience as important components, and they kept working on it to develop it. But here's what I do. When I go into a new organization and I don't know who the people are in there, I will take me a decade to find out who are the people of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. I don't do that. So there is no interview, questionnaire, profile, Myers-Briggs personality test that gives me the people of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. I actually have that for the psychology community to develop better tools for that. There's none that works right now. Dan Kahneman in the Israeli army spent decades trying to figure this out. He's a Nobel Prize winner, and he does not know. He is how he does, and he is how we see that it works. The only way to find these people is through the test of execution. This is very common actually in militaries around the world. You do not find your best warriors, which typically have the similar traits, by the way. You do not find your best warriors by doing them psychological tests, even through boot camp. They are only revealed on the theater of war. And we don't want to have theaters of wars in our organization, but what we create is a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. You give an equal opportunity to everyone. You make the system for identifying, prioritizing, and executing value creation ideas crystal clear. You have an incredibly disciplined vetting mechanism to choose the ones that create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. And then you let people go at it. And what you find out is that there will be about 20 to 30% of your workforce who will be like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to show what I can do. And out of that group, you're going to have a smaller fraction who will get it done, who will have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, the resilience to vet their ideas, to mature their ideas, to execute their ideas, and deliver great value creation and strategy execution for the organization. Only through the test of execution they are revealed. I have an entire presentation just on that because it is so critical. Because the whole competitive advantage of the great enduring organizations is that they have mechanisms. It starts with their hiring programs, and then they are affirmed by their business practices day to day, with clear meritocracy of ideas and execution mechanisms to find these people. Finding these people is the greatest lever for scaling to that $1 trillion level. And you only find these people through the test of execution. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is no better way of finishing the session than on that note. It's not about methods. It's not about ideas. It's not about technologies. If you want to be at the highest level, the great enduring organizations level, which is reserved for very, very few in the world to reach that, which it takes a decade plus of development to be there. If you're going to be there, it's about people, not all the people. It's about finding the right people in your organization who have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to accelerate innovation, collaborative leadership development, and value creation. So it's been an honor to be here with you today. Next week, we'll kick off Digital Transformation Workplace Live. We have tremendous speakers from Amazon, from other incredible organizations from all over the world who are going to be sharing their experience with you, especially in the face of the pandemic that we have experienced, how digital transformations have accelerated in the workplace. We're going to be talking about that. We'll continue the conversation on LinkedIn. Go in there, make a comment about the sessions that you have had here, and you know, any insights that were helpful to you. Let's talk on LinkedIn. Leave a comment there. I truly appreciate you engaging with us. Lots of things going on in the world right now, and we value your time and your ability to be here with us. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Remember, we will send you the recordings for all of the sessions and any materials that were provided next week via email as well. So hang tight. We'll do some processing over the weekend and early next week, and by the middle and end of next week, we should have the email with you for you so that you can access all the sessions. Thank you very much for everybody from around the world. We have more than 20 countries in these sessions, and it's a real privilege to host the sessions and share this knowledge with everybody. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.